So this is going to be a quick video about what to do when your dry erase marker has dried out and it's not writing, but you feel like there's ink left in it or it should be writing. This is a new dry erase marker. It's an Amazon Basics, but it could be any brand. And it's been uncapped for 2 weeks. Prior to being uncapped, it had essentially zero usage. I just wrote down a word or two to test out that it actually worked, and then I left it uncapped so we could test out some of the best ways to restart a working dry erase marker. So you can see it's completely dry, even though it has essentially zero usage. So theoretically, this ink should be full. And here is a brand new one I bought at the same time. Works as expected. What a lot of people say is that these use an alcohol-based ink. It doesn't say that on here anywhere, so if you don't have the packaging, it may not be clear that that's true, but usually these have some sort of alcohol-based ink. Typical advice is that you want to use alcohol to start it. If you're at an office or something like that, or school, you probably don't have rubbing alcohol lying around, but you may have hand sanitizer. This is largely alcohol-based. It's 69% ethyl alcohol. So let's give that a shot and see if that helps restart this marker. I'll saturate the tip. We'll give it a few minutes, and then we'll see if we're writing again. Okay, so we'll wipe off any excess there. And now let's see how we're doing. A little bit of color, but not enough. That's just like a little bit of the liquid or the alcohol from here, just pulling the color out of here. That's not restarting it. For the record, let's just assume that a longer saturation wouldn't have done the trick. That's something we'll test out later on in this video. For now, let's do something else. This is little alcohol wipes. Again, very common, something you might have with you. And these are alcohol. These are isopropyl alcohol, 70% by volume. The problem is that you have very little volume in here. So I think this is probably a good test, but insufficient liquid to really do what we want to do. But again, this is a really common thing to have around. So let's use a few of these to try to compensate for the volume. Again, it's not going to be as good as a tub of alcohol that's just sitting in, but try to wrap this up and we'll let it sit for a while, and then we'll see if it restarts the marker. Okay, so it's been about 30 minutes of the marker sitting in here. Let's see how it does. Clearly you see some color bleeding there. It's a good sign. So a little bit more, but not great. It's definitely not restarted, but we do see that there is some penetration and some of the ink is being pulled out more so than last time. I'm going to say that this has some good merits to it, but it's probably not enough of the alcohol to do the job. Okay, so we've been looking at chemical solutions to the problem. Some people have recommended online a physical solution, and that will be to get a pair of pliers, whatever you have, and we're going to remove the marker tip, that piece of felt or whatever it is, from here, flip it around, and see if there's, let's assume there's ink in the reserve. It just can't get through here as this piece is dried out. We'll flip it around, and we might be good to go. Let's see if that works. First question is, can you actually remove this nib or this piece? Okay, that worked. Pulled out very easily. And now my first test will be to see if the inside of this can write. Okay, it's a good sign. Now we'll see that this is, unlike all the online suggestions, no one noted that this piece is asymmetrical. So it's wider here than it is here. So getting it inside and turning around and getting it inside, it's not that easy. It's just not going to fit with the piece is too small. So let's try to see if we can mash it up a little bit. Yeah, no problem there. It looks like it's relatively soft, so we should be able to squeeze it and get it in. If I mush this piece down, it basically returns to shape. So try to poke it in, maybe. I am damaging the felt. Okay, so mashing it in is not working. You can see the actual felt is starting to separate here, which is going to defeat the purpose of putting it back in, because even if I get it back in, the end piece, you know, the tip will be so ruined that'll functionally be useless. Okay, so I'm going to just clip off the end piece. I'll see if it works with a shorter end. So this will fit in, just because it's the same shape as it was on the other side. It's symmetrical now. And maybe just now the end piece will be a little finer and a little shorter. Okay, so let's give that 10 minutes. Okay, so this has been sitting for about 15 minutes, cap on with the felt reversed. So let's see how it's doing. So I'm seeing some signs of life here, but obviously not a ton. And then this piece is really on the short side. So I think what I would say at this point is that this would be okay in an emergency situation if you just need to get 10 minutes of writing done, but it's not going to be a proper fix, considering that technically this whole thing is full and you want to, or you should be able to get the entire life or most of the life out of the marker. I guess maybe there's a chance that in the nib drying out, all of this dried out as well, but I don't feel like that's necessarily the case, and we should be able to get more out of this. Since we're in desperation mode now, and this thing is functionally useless, even though it has value to us, and we, you know, probably need it, which it's an emergency, and this is the last marker we have, so on and so forth, let's try some other options. I think one thing we could do is try to extend that wick, and that is to put something else in there that is able to move the liquid from this end to this end, and this piece is too short. So let's try a little piece of paper towel. These are very good at moving liquid, and perhaps if we roll it up, it'll fit in there, and it'll be a good way to essentially extend this piece. Obviously, the problem here is once this piece of paper towel goes in here, it's not coming out. So if this doesn't work, the marker is probably going in the trash. But theoretically, it would have been going in the trash anyway. So it's a no-lose situation for us. So it's very tight, under 1/4 inch, and it has these little ridges in there. A little hard to see, those little ridges that are vertical. So we need to make this really fine. We only lost a fraction of what we had, so it doesn't have to be quite this long, but I'd rather have more and have it pack in than have less. So we'll twist it, push it in. Okay, it's in there fairly well. Now we will put this piece back. We'll see. Okay, it's not too far off from the original length. Okay, just to get a reference point here, we have here essentially nothing. Let's give it 20 minutes. Cap and store horizontally, so we'll stick with that. Actually, maybe I'll put it on a very, very slight decline. Okay, so it's been 30 minutes with this on its side, and let's see how it does relative to the previous line. About the same. Looks like that paper towel is not really wicking the ink. Pull it out and see if we can see what's going on in there. It's fully blue, so it looks like the paper towel is probably doing its job. Put some more in there and see if that'll help. Okay, so we added the extra scrap of paper towel in there. We let it sit vertically this time for about 30 minutes, and let's see how we're doing. So this end piece is essentially wrecked, so that's probably not helping, and very little flow. I think we can call this one a failure. Let's get back to the drawing board. We'll get this working red marker, and we will let it sit out for about 2 weeks Then we'll go back and see what we can do to revive it. Okay, so for the next test, I let it sit for about 3 hours in isopropyl alcohol, 70% solution. This is the same stuff you get at the supermarket, CVS, Rite Aid, whatever's near you. It's, $2. It's very standard stuff. It's been sitting here for like 3 hours. I'm sure 30 minutes would have been fine, but I figured I'd let it sit longer. None of the marker seeped into here, but I'm hoping that it did kind of suck up some of the alcohol. I would have expected this solution to be red. It didn't get any color, but let's see what happens when we write with this. Ideally, this marker would have been rehydrated by that alcohol. Okay, so it was completely dry, and now we're getting a little bit of color. Not much, but definitely some, which is an interesting sign. We had nothing before, and now we're writing. Obviously, it's drying out now, but we're getting enough ink coming out that it's not just what's in the tip. Clearly, it's been absorbed somewhat. I doubt it went all the way up here and absorbed a whole lot. It doesn't really wick that well, I guess, but we're getting a couple words worth of text out of here. Just for reference, here's what a marker from the same pack that's been left capped and unused looks like. That's a level of saturation a new one would have. Again, it's the same age. It's just been fully capped the whole time. And again, this was sitting for over 3 hours. So I don't think the duration was an issue. If I dip it just for a few seconds, dry it. So it's more than that. It's definitely some level of absorption. It's not just pulling out of the tip when it's wet. I would say that soaking it in alcohol, the way a lot of websites suggest online, not as simple as that. Okay, so another tip says what you should do to fix your marker is not necessarily let it soak upside down for a very long amount of time, but get the tip nice and wet and then keep it inverted for some length of time. And that allows the alcohol in here. Some actually say you could use vinegar too to seep back down in here and saturate all of this using gravity, as opposed to hoping for a wicking action where the alcohol is going to go up the wick. Kind of makes sense. The gravity will definitely pull it down more assuredly than the wick will pull it up. What we'll do is, actually, let's force the issue a little bit. We'll pull that nib out. Let's see if we can get a tiny little bit of the alcohol in here. Just a drop or two should do it. We will put this back in place. Now, give it a shake, and we'll let it sit for a couple hours upside down. Okay, so it's been about 12 hours with the dry erase marker sitting upright after putting the alcohol in there, and it's been capped the whole time, so let's see how it's doing. And then just for reference, here is the writing we did yesterday. Okay, so a lot of alcohol pour out, and now not much is coming. A little bit of color, definitely some alcohol drips here and there. See some breakdown here, almost like a sandy type stuff. So definitely some excess of that alcohol coming through, which means it wasn't fully absorbed in whatever's up here. And it was inverted all night and capped. So that's a little bit surprising. And it's pretty dry to the touch. Okay, so I'm gonna say that does not work. And at this point, I'm gonna say that if your dry erase marker was left out for an extended period of time, say 2 weeks, it's not gonna get revived. We'll check back in and see if we can figure anything out in future videos. Thanks for watching.